So the Aerosmith story. This video today, nothing to do with whiskey, the story. I will talk about Rabbit Hole in the middle of this, but there's not really a lot to talk about this either. But we're gonna try it together and that'll be fun. I've always kind of liked the Rabbit Hole stuff. They're always an interesting approach to things. So, if you remember in the last video, I told you I played a crappy gig in Avila Beach. The owner heard us, said, "We did such a good job. My friend books for Aerosmith. They need an opening band for a show at Paso Robles State Fair. I want you guys to be the opening act." And I went, oh, hell yes. And that led to one of the coolest gigs I think I've ever played. So, I just realized this glass, I don't know if you can see it. See all the weird, like wonky whiskey vault labeling? This was when we had bought an engraver and I was trying to figure out engraving myself. I couldn't figure out how to get the rollers to move in time with the glass, but it was still a good Glencairn, so we kept it. This is from like 9 years ago. That's crazy. Okay, now, the first thing you have to know is I'm a huge Aerosmith fan. I've always loved Aerosmith. Not as much as I've loved other bands, but like I always had a soft spot for Aerosmith. As a matter of fact, my junior year of high school, my math project, we did a music video to Aerosmith's You're My Angel, and we traded all the words for math words and puns and turned it in as a rocking music video with math terms in it, because I'm that kind of a dork, and got the highest grade of everybody. And it was an awesome music video, rocking out in an empty barn and like a flamethrower with a hairspray can. It was awesome. Huge fan of Aerosmith. I think they're one of the great true rock star bands, like the kind of band that Almost Famous movie is about. That kind of like real rock stars, you know? Like Rolling Stones and Springsteen. So I would have been excited to see them, let alone play. So we get driving in there that day. The whole band's just freaking out. We're super excited. We have a whole bunch of friends who all of a sudden really want to be roadies. Hey, I'll carry your gear. Hey, I'll carry your guitar. Hey, I'll carry each one of your drums. I don't think we lifted anything that entire day. There were so many friends of ours who'd be like, "Oh, let me get that for you. Let me get there." I'll go looking around to see if they could see Steve Tyler. And so we walk onto the stage, and immediately, this stage is freaking massive. It's 50 feet, more like probably 30 yards long. It's huge, 30, 40 yards. It's got to be bigger than that. 3 Jumbotrons. The Jumbotrons were so big that they went from almost stage level to covering up the highest level seating in the back of the fair. And there were 3 of them, 1 middle and 2 sides. And then the sound. Guys, the sound. I don't know how many of you are musicians and I was a drummer first, but in this band I was the front man. But just because you have to experience it, my drummer let me get back there and be like, "Let me just play the kit just for sound check, just for a couple of things." If you've ever experienced a 20,000-seater stadium with a stadium rock sound system on a stage and hit the kick drum and the snare, and just that, you don't even have to play, just boom, crack, you will feel like a god. And then I got to the front and I hit guitar and I clicked on one pedal and went, and it just filled. And then I grabbed the mic and did a vocal check, and I have never felt so cool in my whole life. And I'm looking around at the band, and we're all just like, just can't wipe the smiles off of our faces. We're having a great time. We do a great sound check. Thank God our music actually worked in a stadium. We weren't sure. We had been rocking clubs, and I mean really rocking clubs. And we had no idea whether our music would translate to that level, but man, it translated so much. 2 things happened. One is the sound guys all asked for albums. All the stage crew and the sound guys are like, "You guys got an album?" We handed out like 30 albums that day. And 30 is, when it came time for the show, the sound guy, and you wouldn't know this in a normal, but normally the opening band gets like sound at like 60% volume, so that, and no lights, and maybe the screens, but not usually, because when the big band gets up there, you want it to be a big deal. They ran the Jumbotrons, they ran the light rig, and they cranked the sound for us. We really got treated really well at that gig. But the whole time, there was this fan, and I'm standing on the front middle, kind of juts out with 2 monitors, and there's a fan about this big around, tilted back below the monitor stage level, and it's aimed right at me, and it's on, and it's blowing pretty hard. Like if I didn't have a beard then, but if I did, it would be like flying a little bit as I sang. And I sort of asked one of the guys, like, hey, do we really need that fan? He was like, no one touches the fan. I'm like, oh, okay. I won't ask, my bad. But it was like, I kept thinking, it's hot out here because this is summer and the, Paso Robles, they can get hot. But it's not that hot. Like, that's a lot. But whatever. I guess Aerosmith gets really hot when they play. That's actually not what happens. So we play our show, and we have a ball. Our fans take up like a couple of rows in the very front, and they're going, wah! And then the rest of the stadium is like... But we didn't care. We were having the time of our lives. And then we ended, and we go down around to the front of the stage to get to hear Aerosmith, standing in the press pit with our hands on the stage, and I'm thinking, this is what I'm here for too. And I'm going to tell you what happened next, where I learned what the fan was for. All right, this is Rabbit Hole, and this is their Cavehill. This is a 4-grain. They call it a 4-grain. Now, any other distillery in North America says this is a 4-grain, they're going to mean corn, wheat, rye, barley. They used 2 different kinds of barley, and they call it a 4-grain. I feel like that's stretching it a little bit, but it is 2 different kinds of barley, and one of them is a normal malted barley, and one of them is a honey malted barley, and they say that the wheat in here is a malted wheat. So there's a lot of malt going on in here, variations of malt. So will it impact? Yeah, I'm sure it will. I don't know that I've ever had honey malted barley, and it's not like with honey or anything like that. It's a name of a type of barley strain, honey barley, honey malt. Anyway, so Rabbit Hole, 2012 was founded by a guy who came out of the psychology industry and wanted to make whiskey in Kentucky. 47.5%, 95 proof. Well done. At least 3 years old. What am I smelling? I'm trying to find something that's not just standard bourbon, and I feel like anything I would answer that question with is psychosomatic. It just smells like a slightly sweeter bourbon, but still just bourbon. It's still got corn dusty and sort of that caramel, and it is a little more like Honey Nut Cheerio than I've ever had in a bourbon. But very simple. Oh, not a lot of body to that. I think I'm looking for more weight and heft in the palate, and what I'm getting is this initial blush of sweetness, and then this sort of like huge drop off mid palate that just goes shunk and vanishes, and then it sort of like resurfaces with a soft, oaky sweetness. Yeah, same experience. Sort of a little explosion in the front, a little drop, and then a resurfacing spread. It's very sweet, very vanillan, a little more grainy than I'm used to in a bourbon. And by grainy, I don't mean granola, but I mean just like it's really accented the corn notes of this, strangely. It's okay. It's very gentle, very approachable. I'm gonna add a little water since it's 47. Let's see. On the nose, that just pushes the corn dusty note to the top and drowns the sweetness. Oh, whoa, yo. It obliterates the palate. A little bit of water just fractures any structure that it had. Maybe if it's settled for a little bit, it'll soften back up, but we'll see. Okay, so we're standing with our hands on the stage. The lights go dark. The stadium's now actually full. The band starts coming out one by one, and they start rocking a first song, and for the life of me, I can't remember what their first song was. If there's a true Aerosmith like fan site, they probably have the set list from that night somewhere buried on a website. But it was rock and roll, and it wasn't, I mean, it was right out of the gates, and it wasn't Walk This Way or something like that, but it was an iconic one. And then out of the back, with the whole band rocking the stage, comes Steven Tyler, and he's wearing like skin-tight, painted-on leather pants, like a fishnet tank top, and this like long, satiny, dressing gowny kind of flowy cape that goes down his arms and down past his feet like a cloak, and he's got his long hair, and he's sort of swinging his microphone stand around his head and strutting, but he's doing it really low. And I'm just standing there thinking, look, this is the most rock and roll thing I've ever seen in my life. And then he gets down on one knee and he starts singing on the front of the stage, holding his microphone back. And then he takes one step forward and stands up right between his monitors, and that fan hits him dead center. And his cloak billows out, and his hair blows in the wind, and he's singing his song, and I went, oh, that's what the fan was for. He just wants to rock and roll. And I thought, you know, that's why I'm not famous, because I don't have hair. That's probably the only reason. If I had flowy locks that could wave in the wind, and I could wear my cloak, I'd probably be famous. That's definitely the only reason I wasn't famous. Definitely the only one. I'm really glad you guys are here. I'll see you next week. Cheers.